Today is a very sad day. We have a problem. Kaput. Sparks.
All right, so we can finally go for the final drive.
Today is a significant day, and some might say a very sad day for Maude, my Maude Mk2 Escort, because it's time to rip her apart, which is of course part of the plans of building up my other Maude Mk2 Escort that I like to call Heidi. But Maude has been such a positive thing in my life and on this channel, so I think she deserves one last drive before I do rip her apart. My living room is looking a little bit less busy at the moment. Slightly less parts scattered around everywhere, but I am still very busy on eBay getting rid of parts that I've been hoarding. And of course, when I rip Maude apart, I'll have even more bits to chuck on eBay. It's keeping me busy. It's making my garages a bit more empty. It's helping me keep my wallet a little bit less empty. What I do have on the floor next to the eBay stuff though is Maude's battery, because I wanted to make sure it was fully charged before I took her on today's drive. In other news, here's a sneak peek to what's coming up on petrolheadstyle.com. Mk2 Fiesta RS Turbo, clothing and other cool products coming to that website very soon. And if you're signed up to the mailing list at petrolheadstyle.com, you'll be sent a discount code when that new collection goes live. We have a problem. Once I'd pulled Maude out of the garage, I switched her off so that I could lock my garage door up, and then I was unable to restart her. And it looks like it's an issue with the starter motor itself. Now I've got the trigger wire unplugged, and I was just checking that the contacts were nice and clean. I actually only cleaned these recently when this starter motor stopped working recently. So yeah, they're all clean. I've tried bypassing, so connecting the main battery lead to the trigger connector, and nothing happens. In fact, when I connect it, the fuel pump stops whirring. So yeah, this starter motor I think is kaput. Now I did notice before that the nut that holds the stud steady in the solenoid was loose, and that's why that stud was loose. That nut is done up now, but maybe I've damaged a connection inside when that was loose. But yeah, it worked to get it out of the garage, but now I can't get the starter to work. And I have tried whacking the starter and the solenoid with this massive hammer as well, which sometimes brings a dead starter back to life temporarily. But yeah, not this time. Now, the plan was to take this thing for a test drive, then I was going to bring it back and compression test the engine before I then, rip Maude apart at some point in the near future. So that was why I wanted to take this thing for a last drive, as well as just taking it for a last drive, because, just to end the story of Maude. Now, what I was also going to do was nick this starter motor and fit it to Esther, my Mk2 Escort, because her starter didn't work the other day when I tried to start her, and she's going to be going to her new home tomorrow. I'll talk about that in a future video. But yeah, unless I can get this starter motor to give me one more final bit of life, I'm not going to be able to take Maude for this drive. Well, not now anyway. Dear oh dear. All right, so in a bid to not completely waste today, I'm heading over to my other garage where I store Esther, my Mk2 Escort, and Heidi, my other Maude Mk2, of course. And I'm going to be definitively finding out whether Esther's starter motor is actually dead. Because when I discovered that it wouldn't turn the engine over recently, I didn't have time that day to actually jack the car up and clean the contacts on the starter motor. So fingers crossed, it might not actually be dead. It might just have a bit of corrosion on the contacts. So yeah, I'm going to go over there now and find that out, because then I'll know whether I need to buy one starter motor or two starter motors, and then I'll also know whether I'm going to actually be able to drive Esther to her new home in 2 days' time. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. Although in this video I did want to kind of touch on what's been going on in my personal life lately, because loads of you guys have been in touch asking how I am with all that, which is very much appreciated. I will go into more detail about how all of that has been affecting me mentally and stuff on my other channel, so definitely go and subscribe to the Marcus Hayes On Track channel if you haven't already. But you know, we're doing what we need to sort things out with regards to dealing with my mum's death, dealing with looking after my dad who's got dementia, and yeah, we're just cracking on with it. You know, what else can you do? But I did manage to carry out my sort of financial assessment that I wanted to do to figure out how I'm going to be moving forward with my life, with the channel, etc. And I can say that things are not as bad as I feared, which is good, but not quite as good as I hoped. But you know, it's fine. It is what it is. And with what else has been going on in my life, I'm just happy that I was in a position to look after my dad and stuff when my mum died. So yeah, it's not all bad. I'm not going to be looking to get myself a job to bring me up to the summer, not right away anyway, which was one of my options, because I'm going to need to dive into ripping Maude apart quite urgently. Now, originally, I planned to do it at the beginning of January, but that was before my mum died and everything else happened. But yeah, it's going to happen a bit more urgently, because I'm struggling to get a second garage close to my home. So it might mean that when I move out of my other two garages, I'm going to have to cope with just the one garage temporarily. So Heidi will have to go in that garage, and everything else that I need or want to keep with regards to the cars, my tools and parts and whatnot, they're all going to have to go in that same garage. Now, there is the option, which I'll definitely be using, to put some parts in my garden at home, wheels and stuff like that, stuff that it doesn't really matter if it's outside. So I will be doing that. But it might mean that I need to sacrifice some of my shelving and stuff like that if I can't temporarily store it all until I get that second garage. So that's making things a bit more complicated potentially with the big move. But it's another reason why I'm really glad that I have been putting loads of effort in recently to selling spares and stuff like that, because that makes things a little bit less complicated. But yeah, I'm going to need to rip Maude apart quite urgently, which is fine. You know, it's going to give me more bits to throw on eBay. It's going to keep me busy. But it just means that, you know, going to get a job right now isn't really an option, but that's absolutely fine. Another thing that's going to complicate things with regards to the garage that I have already got at home is the fact that the roof is quite leaky. I've got an idea that I'm going to try when the weather gets better, another bodge really, to try and get that roof to be leak free, because yeah, I don't have funds to be replacing an asbestos roof. But I've seen this sort of plastic corrugated stuff that you can lay on top of the roof. So I'm going to give that a go, but I need to wait until the summer before I can crack on with that. So in the meantime, once we do the big move, Heidi's going to have to go in the leaky garage. I'm going to have a cover over her because she doesn't have any windows in. And yeah, a lot of the stuff will stay inside Heidi's body shell. And in terms of shelving and stuff, when I do the big move, I want to try and make the garage at home and the second garage, when I eventually get one, in terms of storage, I want it to just literally be like shelving with everything in boxes. So everything's more organised, it's going to be a better use of space, and then potentially it means that because everything's in boxes, it's not going to matter so much that the garage at home is has currently got a leaky roof. All right, well, it's bad news because Esther's starter motor doesn't work. And I've just double confirmed by hooking this up with the jump leads to Esther's battery. So we've got the positive terminal where the thick red wire goes, connected to the positive of the battery, and then the negative, or the earth, basically the body of the starter, hooked up to the negative side of the battery. And then it's just a case of bridging that positive to where the trigger wire would go. We've got nothing except some sparks. So that fully confirms that Esther's starter is dead. I probably should have removed Maude's starter earlier on while she was jacked up, but there you go. I'm pretty certain that that starter motor is also dead. Now this is actually the starter motor that was saved by my good friend Lee Booth when this lug snapped off. So it's already had 2 lives, you could say. And yeah, I'm gonna have to get hold of another starter. It is 2 days since the last clip, and today is Saturday, and to my surprise, I have already been able to get 2 brand new starter motors. I actually thought that these were going to come on Monday, so really happy that they've already come, and it means that I should today be able to take Maude for that final drive. This starter motor here is exactly the same as this one, and this is the one that I removed from Esther in the clips earlier in the video, and this should be the same as the one that I've got fitted to Maude. Now Esther and Maude have slightly different flywheels fitted in terms of the gap between the mounting face of the bell housing, where the starter motor bolts to, and the ring gear on the flywheel where this cog engages to turn the engine over. And that's why both cars have slightly different starter motors. The one that I'll be fitting to Esther, I think the part numbers for these is LRS 707, which is a Lucas part number, whereas this starter motor that I'm going to be fitting to Maude is just a Pinto starter motor, because the flywheel spec in terms of where the ring gear is a Pinto spec on Maude, and it's the same as a Z-Tech spec on Esther, even though they're both running aftermarket light flywheels. And if you look at these 2 starter motors, you'll see what I mean. This cog pokes out further than this one. So the flywheel on Maude is a bit further away than this flange than the one that's fitted to Esther. Now the thing is, if you've got like a Z-Tech flywheel that's been re-drilled for a Pinto clutch, or if you've got a Z-Tech spec, if you like, light flywheel like I've got fitted to Esther, you can actually fit a Pinto starter. You just have to space it away, you know, put in nuts or spacers on the bolts so that the cog will be in the right place. So I could fit Maude's starter motor to Esther if I wanted to by spacing it away by about 14mm, but I can't fit Esther's starter motor to Maude because, yeah, it will be too far away from the ring gear. I hope that makes sense, but essentially I've got 2 brand new starter motors for both cars now, so yeah, I'm good to go. Now I may have a little bit of trouble fitting Maude's starter motor, and I'll quickly explain why. Maude is running a Type 9 gearbox with an RS2000 alloy bell housing, so essentially I needed like a Mk2 Escort RS2000 Pinto starter motor, but the company on eBay where I got these starter motors didn't actually have that particular starter motor in stock. But apparently this one is exactly the same, except this one has a little bit more material on this mounting flange here, and the seller sent me a picture showing me how much I'd need to shave away, and I've basically copied that picture and drawn this line here. So I may need to shave this little bit off here to make this fit, but that is based on fitting this starter motor to a Pinto engine with an RS2000 alloy sump, right? Whereas I'm using an ST170 engine with a G19 alloy sump. So I might not actually have to shave it away. We'll have to see. And yeah, it's time for me to see right now. I got Maude jacked up and disconnected her battery and then removed her starter motor. I could clearly see that the old starter had been shaved, and seeing as my grinder was at my other garage, I used a hacksaw and a flat wheel on a drill to shave the new starter. When I trial fitted it, I realised I needed to shave another bit off to clear the manifold,
and I tidied up the shaving on the flange. Then I could get the starter fitted and wired up, and once the battery was hooked back up, I could fire Maude's engine into life, and she was finally ready for the final drive. Alright, so we can finally go for the final drive in this old banger. I've just put a little bit of fuel in her tank, but only a little bit because, as I say, this is the final drive, and it is sad, isn't it? This car has been very significant on this channel. It's been very significant in my life. When I bought this thing, it was basically because I got one of those refunds, the PPI refunds from a loan that I had years and years and years prior. And yeah, I just didn't want to blow the money down the pub, because that was what my lifestyle was like in them days. So I bought this, and yeah, it took a couple of years to get it on the road. The plan originally was to keep this thing absolutely standard. Does that sound familiar? But yeah, then I changed my mind, decided to turn it into a Ratlook drift car. It got a Z-Tech engine eventually, and yeah, I've had loads of fun in it. We've been to drift days. I think in terms of learning to drift, I don't think I'm any good at drifting, but you know, this car has been very significant in that. Obviously, we've also taken it to a load of underground car meets and done, you know, your sort of silly burnouts and donuts and whatnot in Mexico, of course. But yeah, this thing has been loads of fun, and it is going to be sad to see it go. But ultimately, I'm going to be reshelling it essentially with Heidi. So in a way, this thing will live on. Her heart will live on in Heidi, at least temporarily, that's for sure. But yeah, having this car, I'm grateful to have been in a position to have this car. I think I've had this car over 12 years now. I think it's been on the road 10 years. Now, obviously, like with any old banger Ford, there has been plenty of grief along the way, mainly with oil leaks and snapped half shafts. But, you know, part of owning these cars and part of the fun for me is getting out and fixing them when they go wrong, and you know, modifying them and doing silly things with them. And yeah, I've done plenty of all of that with this car, and I am going to miss it. And today, you know, I'm driving it for the first time in quite a long time, and it's always the way. When you don't drive these cars for a while, you kind of feel like you can let go of them, right? It has been very easy for me to come to terms with breaking this thing and getting rid of it because I haven't been driving it for weeks. But then when you jump back in the car, you start kind of thinking that you don't want to get rid of it. And I've been through that cycle with both cars over the years. And yeah, I am still making this the last drive. I will be ripping this thing apart, but you know, jumping in it now and driving it for the first time in a few weeks, it does make me feel a bit sad to get rid of it. But yeah, I mean, I always say this thing feels like absolute junk to drive, and it really does. There's something going on with the front legs that I need to address. It's got Capri front legs on it, and apparently there's these like brass, I think, bushes, like sleeve things that you can replace. So I think that's what's wrong with these. So if it wasn't for the suspension issues, then maybe it would feel a little bit better to drive. It definitely pulls to the right under braking. So I don't know if I've got a seized caliper or something's going on, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of these parts are going to get fitted to Heidi, so I can have a look at things whilst I'm doing that. And yeah, hopefully Heidi will feel like this, but more refined. She'll look a bit better because I'm planning to actually paint her shiny paint rather than rolling matte paint on like I did with this. And ultimately Heidi has a way more solid shell than this was even 10 years ago when I put it on the road. So, you know, it should mean that I'm going to have a car like this but better for another 10 years or more, who knows. So, you know, plenty of fun and yeah, plenty of good times to come. So
It really is a shame that this thing has got an open diff at the moment, because yeah, if she had an LSD or a welded diff, this final drive would be a whole lot different, but it is what it is. Obviously I will be looking to put an LSD in Heidi. I've still got the LSD that came out of this, and when I had a look at it recently, the casing does seem a bit bashed up, but I think it will go again. So unless I'm not seeing something that my diff man did see when he had a look at it, yeah, I think it'll be alright. But yeah, time will tell. But yeah, I mean, this car is a lot slower than Esther, my Mk2 Escort, but again, because I haven't driven Esther for a while and I haven't driven this for a while, you jump in this and there is enough power. Like, it is a load of fun, you know. It's just about enough power to take this thing to a drift day, or take Heidi to a drift day when it's got this engine, pump the tyres up a bit and have a load of fun. But in terms of the engine, I know it's very samey, right? Me chucking this ST170 into Heidi. You know, Esther's already got an ST170, although that's a very different setup with the Gen V fuel injected setup, but I know it is samey, and in an ideal world I'd be switching things up and trying to fit a different engine to Heidi. You know, Esther's engine is now tired as well, so I should be thinking about putting a different engine in Esther as well to keep the content more interesting, and yeah, just switch it up, right? Make a change. But financially, that's just not realistic for me at the moment. You know, switching your engine up completely, you know, there's a lot of costs involved with that, and it's not just buying the engine. However, I do have plans for a very different type of engine setup for Heidi, which I'm hoping to be in a position to fit at some point in the future. But for now, she's gonna have to have this ST170 just so I can get her on the road, and then in the future we can think about yeah, this way more exciting, you could say, engine setup. As I've already mentioned in this video, before I start ripping this thing apart and before I remove the engine ready to fit to Heidi, I want to do a compression test just to see how tired this engine is. So yeah, that's next on the agenda. All right, back at the garage with my beautiful assistant, and we're just about to do a compression test. One thing I forgot to mention on the drive though, when I initially tried to start Maude's engine with the new starter motor, it didn't turn over with that first press of the button. But then it was absolutely fine, and it's been absolutely fine ever since. But that did make me want to test the old starter on the battery. And when I did, it turns out that the starter motor does work. Although the contacts on that starter motor are really corroded. So potentially, maybe Maude didn't need a new starter motor, or maybe it is working but it's not strong enough. I don't know, but I'm not going to throw it away for now. I'll keep it in the garage, and when I need another starter motor, I'll find out for sure whether it is or isn't broken. But both of those starter motors that I've bought were really cheap, so it's not the end of the world. Anyway, I've already disconnected Maude's coil pack, which is just under the inlet manifold there, and I've taken the HT leads out and removed all the spark plugs. The spark plugs don't really look even, if I'm honest. This one kind of looks alright, that side, but then, yeah, that one looks alright, but then number 2 definitely looks a bit blacker. Number 3 looks quite perfect, but then number 4 looks blacker. Yeah, it's really weird. If these two were different from these two, then I would say that that's probably to do with the balance of the carbs. If these two were different from the outer two, then I would say that could be something to do with the coil pack, because one side of it does 1 and 4 and one side of it does 2 and 3. But yeah, it's literally neither of them two. It's, yeah, opposite than that. We've got 1 and 3 look the same and 2 and 4 look the same. So not really sure what's going on there. Let me know in the comments if any of you guys have got any ideas. But yeah, my beautiful girlfriend will man the button, woman the button, sorry, they the button, and I'll use this gauge to see what compression we've got. Ready? Yeah. Start. 125. 125. 130 maybe. And 125. Alright, so there it is. Maude's engine has got roughly 125 psi across all 4 cylinders. It's good that all the cylinders are really even, but 125 psi isn't high compression. I did suspect that this engine was tired, and I suspected that it wasn't quite as tired as Esther's engine. Esther made 100 psi across all 4 cylinders. So yeah, Maude's engine isn't quite as tired as Esther's. I have always found, for some reason, that ST170s read low on the compression when I do it this way. I don't know why that is, but yeah, I'm pretty sure this engine is tired, but yeah, not as tired as Esther's. So yeah, I will be just chucking this engine into Heidi. I'm definitely not looking to rebuild it. I think it's inevitable that I'm going to have to rebuild Esther's, but that's another story. So yeah, that's it. Maude is now ready to be ripped apart, and that's probably going to be what I'm going to be cracking on in the next video. So until then, huge thanks to everyone who has tuned into this video. Give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe to the mailing list at petrolheadstyle.com to be notified about all future releases, including the Mk2 Fiesta RS Turbo collection, which is going to be released very, very soon. Check all the links in the description to follow me elsewhere on the internet. My email address is down there for anyone who wants to contact me. Huge thanks, as always, to my patrons for your ongoing support. But other than that, until next time, from me and my beautiful girlfriend, Kat, thanks for watching.